Hey, this is Antonio. Welcome back to my channel, and we're gonna have some fighting words. But before we go any further, please like and subscribe. So in this video, I want to talk about Floyd Mayweather and I don't know his parenting of Gervonta Tank Davis. So at the press conference, well, the post press conference for Gervonta's fight with Mario Barrios, Floyd let it be known he is not seeking any possible matchups with anybody else outside of the PBC, outside of Showtime. He doesn't want you, he doesn't need you. Why? Because Tank can sell out an arena by itself, so he doesn't need any of those names. But he's also saying what I believe is maybe he doesn't believe Tank can beat a lot of these guys because it was the way he said it. It's one thing if you just want to protect your investment. He fights for Mayweather Promotions, so it's your company and he's your fighter. And I understand that you wanting to protect him, but I think it's time to let the leash extend a little further. Tank has had some comfortable fights, and Barrios, I would say, was his toughest fight to date. In which case, he passed on flying colors. But listen, there's a lot of great fights out there for Tank at 140. A lot of great fights. And once he won that fight, there were a lot of tweets going out saying, I'm up to bat. When do you want to do this? And I'm talking about names like Josh Taylor, Regis Prograis came up, which, by the way, Regis Prograis let it be known, boy, I will knock you out. Those are his words, not mine. Little boy, I will knock you out. So there you go. I would love to see a Regis Prograis versus Gervonta Tank Davis. If you're talking about just a fun firefight where two guys will not back up, that's a fun fight. You're just talking about some head movement at best, but not a whole lot of footwork because they're going to be right there. And it will definitely not go the distance if you're talking about a fight like that. Also, Josh Taylor, like I said, he was like, sign me up, I'll fight him. He's got a belt, I got some belts, sign me up. Listen, Josh Taylor versus Tank Davis, I'm on board for that fight. I am on board for that fight. Listen, I don't know if that's a fight for Tank right now. Maybe in a year, he gets at least 2 more fights under his belt and he gets more comfortable at 140. But to take on a Josh Taylor right now, I totally understand Floyd with that. But, like I said, there's a lot of fights. There are a lot of fights that he can fight. And to keep it all in house, financially, I understand what he's saying. But at some point, you don't want us as, the consumers, us as the fight fans to start calling you out and be like, listen, you need to fight some tougher opposition. Okay, and there's a lot of guys outside of your house that could give you tougher opposition. And we want to see you step it up. And the only reason why we're not saying that is, 2 reasons. One, because Tank is young. And the other reason is because Tank just went up in weight. So it's just like, okay, he's edging forward to step out of his comfort zone, and he's daring to be great in his own way, and he's doing it step by step. But at some point, you can't jump into a division like 140 that has a ton of killers in it and then say, well, I'm not going to fight any of those killers. There's like a bunch of sharks in the tank, and you're like, well, I want to take on the piranhas. That's not going to fly, or it's not going to fly for very long. Maybe one more fight you can get away with that, but after that, they're going to be like, listen, you need to fight some Josh Taylors. You need to fight some Regis Prograis. And I know this is a crazy thing to say out loud, but they're in the same weight class, so I got to bring it up. Adrian Broner. Yes, they are friends. Yes, Adrian's the one who brought Gervonta to Floyd Mayweather. Yes, he's like a big brother, he's like a little brother, but they are in the same weight class. And according to Floyd Mayweather, and I'm just saying what you said, Floyd, we only want to fight people in our stable. Well, it just so happens that Adrian Broner is in your stable. And it also just so happens that Adrian Broner is 140 pounds now, if he can make the weight. But well, that's the weight that he would like to campaign at for the rest of his career. So there you go. You want to have a fight that people would definitely tune into. That I'm not gonna say it has bad history, but it has history. Like little brother stepping up to the big brother type of thing. I remember when Tank and Adrian Broner were always in these clips together. They were always hanging out, going to clubs and doing all this stuff together. Now they don't hang out anymore. They don't hang out at all. Like they don't hang out at all. I remember I believe it was last year, and Adrian Broner said, we don't hang out anymore. Like almost like he was hurt by it, that, he's kind of been pushed aside. Because keep in mind, Tank's career has skyrocketed, and Adrian's career has kind of been on a decline. Even though he's back, he didn't win with a dramatic fashion or anything like that. That's just it. Listen. I'm just going what Floyd Mayweather said. We're gonna keep it in the stable. We're gonna keep it with the PBC and Showtime. Well, Adrian Broner's with the PBC, and he's signed to Showtime. So that's a great fight. That's a fan-friendly fight. And Adrian Broner does have a big fan base. So could you imagine if, just thinking out loud, like a little fantasy fight, could you imagine Adrian Broner and Gervonta Tank Davis showing up in a place like Atlanta and fighting? That would be fireworks. That would bring everybody out. That would definitely pack seats. And that would actually be a pay-per-view fight. If you're talking about a promotion, if you're talking about a press conference, who better to sell it than Adrian Broner? And I'll tell you this, for our press conference, guess who also is going to be there? Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather's always there for Tank, because Tank doesn't say much. He doesn't say a whole lot of anything, So if you put a press conference and you have Adrian Broner, we already know that Floyd's going to be there because he's his promoter. There is definitely going to be some back and forth. Well, I do know there was some bad blood with Adrian Broner and Leonard Ellaby, which is like Floyd Mayweather's right-hand man and advisor. So that would be interesting. I mean, stranger things have happened. Let's just put it like that. Stranger things have happened, and when there's money on the table, it's kind of hard for people to say no. So if we're not going to get a Josh Taylor versus Tank, or we're not going to get a Regis Prograis versus Tank, because according to Regis Prograis, Mayweather and Leonard Ellaby would not let Tank within 100 feet of him. So maybe he was just saying that to bait, but maybe there's some truth to it. Regis Prograis is a very dangerous fight for Tank. I would probably say maybe in like 2 years, he'd be ready for that fight. Maybe like in 2 years, if he stays active, if he stays on the trajectory that he's been on, and he stays in the gym, and he fights 2-3 times a year. Yeah, he'd be ready for Josh Taylor. Yeah, he'd be ready for Regis Prograis. Absolutely. I truly believe he'd be ready for them. And he would, by that time, in 2 years, he would have filled into his frame at 140. He'd be a lot more comfortable. Tank actually said during the post-fight conference, he was asked how come he was so composed during the fight with Mario Barrios. And Tank said, because he was big. He was like, well, he's a big dude. He was even bigger the night of the fight. He was like, I didn't want to just rush in there and get hit with something. So Tank mentally still, hasn't come into 140 pounds, if that's the way he's thinking in the fight. And Josh Taylor is a big dude. Like, he could easily fight at 147. I've already said that Josh Taylor's probably going to end out his career at 154, maybe even 160. So he's a pretty big guy. So Tank needs to work out those little cobwebs in his mind. I mean, like I said, he got the job done, and kudos to him. But if that's in the back of your mind, you don't need that, and you need like 2-3 more fights at 140 to get comfortable into a bigger, thicker frame, but also into the division. So those are my thoughts. But you tell me what you think down below, and as always, like and subscribe.